Hi everyone, so this is a little video about 4 people who were once Mayor of Wallsend. So starting with William Boyd, who was the first Mayor of Wallsend in 1901 to 1902. Mr. Boyd was born in Yorkshire on October the 17th, 1839. He first came to Wallsend in March 1874. In this same year, he became the managing director of the Wallsend Slipway and Engineering Company, a position that he held until his retirement in 1903. He was elected a member of the Wallsend Local Board of Health in 1878, and it would seem he did a good job, as in less than a year he was elected as the chairman of the board to replace C.S. Swan, who had recently died. He continued in this post until 1894, when the local boards were replaced by the district council. At the first meeting of the Wallsend Borough Council in 1901, William Boyd was elected mayor. He tried very hard to preserve the Roman remains at Segadunum. The land on which they stood was at the time owned by the Burrell Atkinson trustees. Sadly, the landowners required too much money, and although Mr. Boyd raised quite a lot of interest in the idea, the land was eventually given over for house building. And of course the famous Leslie Street, Jones Street, Hunter Street, etc. were built over the Roman remains. In 1903, Mr. Boyd was given an oil painting by Ralph Headley, which was said to be an excellent likeness. I'm not 100% sure, but I think this photo is a copy of that painting. In 1906, he retired from council life, but remained a popular man in the town of Wallsend, so much so that when the town hall was built in 1907, he was asked to lay the foundation stone. And he also became the first freeman of the borough. In later years, he moved slowly further and further away from Wallsend, and his final home was Benton House in Cheltenham, where he died in May 1919 at the age of 80 years. This next picture is Sir George Burton Hunter. Many of you will be more than familiar with this name, being connected to swan hunters and of course the hospital on the green. So here's a little bit more information about him. George was born in Sunderland in December 1845, the son of a ship captain and ship owner. He started his career at the age of just 13 in the office of Mr. Thomas Meek. He later went on to work in the shipbuilding yard of Pyle, Hay and Company in Monk Wearmouth. In around 1868 he moved to Glasgow, but returned soon after, going back to his roots in Sunderland, and in 1873 he married Annie Hudson, and they had 4 daughters and 2 sons. In January 1880 he became the managing partner of C.S. Swan and Hunter, and he moved his family to Wallsend. He moved into Weston Villa, and he lived there for 10 years before moving to Jesmond, where he remained until his death. Weston Villa was on the boundary between Wallsend and Newcastle, and is still there today, but I believe it's now split into 2 houses or apartments. George was responsible for building the War Zen Cafe in 1883, and this photo is when George was a little bit younger, so it's quite possible that this was around that sort of time. The Wallsend Cafe was the first place in Wallsend to be lit with electric lights, and it was opened on December the 19th, 1883. We now mostly know this building as Greenways. And he also gave land he owned for the building of things like St. Luke's Church, and he was the board member of Wallsend School Board, and he was elected as the second mayor of Wallsend in 1902 to 1903. In 1911 he was made freeman of the borough of Wallsend, and in 1918 he was knighted and became Sir G.B. Hunter. In 1914 Mr. Hunter bought Wallsend Hall and the land connected to it. He never lived in the property. He was happy at his home in Jesmond at the time, and he gave the land, to the borough of Wallsend, the land to add to the burn clauses which he had already given to the borough to extend the public park. His wife was also quite keen to do things to help around the town, having set up the Wallsend Nursing Association in 1894. It's not surprising that even today the name of Hunter is still seen in many areas of Wallsend, street names and buildings, etc. George Hunter died at his home in Jesmond in January 1937, aged 91, and is buried in Newcastle. Joseph Duffy. Joseph Duffy was born in Enniskeen, I hope I've said that right, in 1848. He first came to Wallsend when he was around 18 or 19 years of age, and he worked at a chemical works in the area. In 1869 he decided to go to America. I have no idea what he did there, but 4 years later he came back to the UK and opened a brickworks in Jarrow. And he also built houses in that area as well. He married Jane Braniff in 1878. Once more in 1884 he came back to Wallsend and started another brickworks. This was roughly situated where the current Carville School was later built. Just as he did in Jarrow, Just as he did in Jarrow, he also built houses in Wallsend, somewhere in the region of 500 of them. The Borough Theater, which was situated on the corner of High Street East and Park Road, which opened in 1909, was also down to Joseph Duffy, built originally to replace the theatre which had been destroyed by fire at Portugal Place several years before the borough opened. He was a member of the Wallsend Local Board, a town councillor, and in November 1909 he became the Mayor of Wallsend. Sadly, he never quite completed his term as Mayor, as he died on July the 29th, 1910. He is buried in Churchbank Cemetery. Joseph had four daughters and two sons, Mary, Catherine, Elizabeth, Louise, Hugh and Patrick. After his death, they wanted to erect a suitable memorial to their father, and they ran a competition which was won by the Newcastle firm of Simpson and Lawson, and they designed the Duffy Memorial Fountain, which was unveiled in 1912. The fountain, which was situated in Richardson Dees Park, was removed many years later, but when the recent park renovations took place, it was decided to replace the fountain with an exact or nearest possible replica of the old fountain, which can now be seen between the bowling greens once more. Our final photo is Joseph Mullen. Joseph Mullen was a well-known stonemason and mayor of Wallsend. Joseph was born in Wallsend, the only one of the four so far, on July the 31st, 1870. His parents were Joseph and Margaret Mullin, and in December 1893 he married Wilhelmina Woff. They had 5 children: Ada, Wilhelmina, Joseph, Euphemia or Euphemia. There are 2 different versions, not quite sure which one's the correct one, and Marjorie. In 1896 he took over the business of Robert Bell, the monumental sculptor, who was situated at the top of Churchbank. He was a member of the Tyne Lodge of Freemasons, and in 1907 was a member of Willington Parish Council. In 1912 he was elected a member of the Tynemouth Board of Guardians, and in March 1919 he secured a seat on the City Council as the Howden representative, and finally in November 1921 he was elected Mayor of Wallsend. Mullen Road is named after him. His daughter Marjorie died in 1910, aged just 5 years old. Rumours circulated that she was killed in an accident on Churchbank. However, I was never sure that this story was true, and thanks to a member of the Wallsend Memories and Photographs group on Facebook, we were able to find out that she had actually sadly died from diphtheria. A copy of her death certificate was obtained, which proved this to be the real cause of death. She is buried in Churchbank Cemetery with her mother, father and older sister Wilhelmina, and Wilhelmina died in 1914, aged 17 years. The story of the little girl's statue, which you can hopefully just see in this photo, is slightly harder to prove. It may or may not have been made at the time of Marjorie's death in her likeness, or it may have simply been an example of the work that could be done, as there were other statues also on the site. We will never know for sure, but the statue now resides at Strettles in Shiremoor after it was damaged several years ago. I'm not 100% convinced it was meant as a memorial to his daughter, as her actual grave is a very simple one, and it seems odd that he would have made such a statue and not placed it where she was buried. But that is obviously just my opinion. Joseph Mullen died on May the 22nd, 1952, leaving £2,118 and 19 shillings to his surviving children. I hope that you've enjoyed that little story about some of the mayors of Wallsend.